Hello, 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 and welcome to Producing in Pandemic, session 33. We are looking at our digital communication agreements currently. We always like to start off with that. I'm going to hit stop share on the screen and welcome everybody to the space. I'm just going to give everybody a heads up. It's possibly going to be low attendance today. A lot of our colleagues are out on the streets helping to organize people and get them involved in voting, which is why, in a very U.S.-centric, United States-centric move, we're going to focus on civically engaged work today. We're going to be looking at some of the work that's already out there. And we'll possibly allow today to be a shorter session so that we can go return to all of our other civically engaged projects. In the meantime, however, we begin, as we always begin, with Producing in Pandemic with our field survey, where we will all introduce ourselves. We do a decolonized, inclusive greeting. So we're going to invite you to give your name and talk to us about where you're coming from. Give us your gender pronouns to interrupt gender discrimination. Do an access check and let us know how this space can be most accessible to you. And if all your access needs are met, you just say, all my access needs are met, because everyone has access needs. And then we'd love for you to share either a challenge or a discovery in Producing in Pandemic. As always, I will model to begin, and I'm just going to say thank you to my colleagues for putting our little script in the chat, because I don't remember it, even though we've done this 33 times in a row so far. My name is Claudia Alec. My gender pronouns are they, their, she, hers. I'm speaking to you from the land of the Ohlone people. The people are still alive, otherwise known as the Bay Area. This is also a moment I take to acknowledge that I'm living in a country with concentration camps, and I look forward to not including that in my daily introductions. I'm the executive producer of a transmedia social justice company. So a lot of our work is we're consulting a lot, but we're also looking for all the different ways we can connect and create action and movement through our cultural producing, both physically embodied and digitally. And I have been just getting into the weeds, looking at the ways the different platforms control distribution of your content, the way they create these paths that force you into monetizing, like force you into paying the platform additional money so more eyeballs can see it. And I've just been really curious about, what are some other models of hosting and distribution we can look at, since video hosting is so darn expensive. Let's see. Another challenge, as always, is now this week's challenge was less about, well, as always, I have the challenge of multiple events taking place at the same time and wanting to be audiencing for several events simultaneously. But also I've realized that I'm missing the thing that reminds me that I have an event that I'm supposed to be going to. So I'm now trying to figure out, what are the different either digital triggers, or are there some analog triggers? Like, do I need to put a Post-it note or something in my house to remind me I set myself an appointment to go see an awesome show on the computer, so that I'm not accidentally watching a bunch of Netflix shows when I'm supposed to be seeing some live performance. So those were two of the challenges that I worked through this week. I also found some additional apps that you can use to augment your Zoom producing experience. And we're in early days. It's such early days, but I'm excited to explore all of these different tools. My access needs are met. I've got my coffee. I do have a pain disorder. So if I pull a face, I'm not pulling a face at anything you say. I'm just pulling a face at one of my muscles pulling me. Other than that, all of my access needs are met. And as always, we don't call on each other, and I don't call on you. You just stack in the chat, put your name in the chat, call on yourself. I look forward to hearing from you all. I just said I wasn't going to call on folks, but it does look like Viviana was the first to stack. So please go right ahead and begin.
Thank you. Just joined, so I wasn't sure where we were at. But glad to be here. I'm Viviana Vargas, also Yura Sapi. I use gender neutral pronouns like they, them. I'm located in Bogota, colonially known as Bogota, Colombia, lands of many indigenous people, including Muisca, Embera, Chami, Embera Catillo, um, and many others, especially folks who have migrated here for opportunity. I one interesting challenge that I've been noting and like reflecting with in producing during the pandemic is like being able to let go of an event, and also I think there's like this thing of like wanting to, for me at least, with the group that I organize with Ballistical in Latin America, like having, you know, events and things and virtual happenings. And then when something cool comes about or somebody wants to organize something, um, being okay with like letting it end, because sometimes it's like a weekly thing or a monthly thing, and it's about two wanting to let things evolve and let things end and move on, and so wanting to be more intentional about that in the future too. So like when producing or organizing something with someone, maybe saying like, okay, this is going to be like a month thing that we're going to do or a week thing, and not leaving it so open so that it can kind of come to a natural close that doesn't feel like a negative. Because being able to, you know, end something or stop working on a particular series allows for more time and space for new things to come up. And especially I think being digital, you know, we want to like have new experiences and new things. So yeah, access needs are met. May need to use the restroom soon. Thank you.
Great, nice to hear from you, Viviana. I'm Joshua Waterstone, he, him pronouns. I am on Ramaytush Ohlone land in the Bay Area. Um, I am currently working with San Francisco Shakespeare as a digital performer and then digitally producing with Fuse Theater. Um, my visual description. I'm a long-haired, white passing man with a beard, gray shirt, wearing headphones right now. And my access needs are met. A challenge or discovery from this week. I would say, so we did, I did my first digital production where I was mixing with Fuse this week. We did an open mic, and it was really fun, but I was mixing it in OBS, and a challenge that I had was that this is an open mic, so performers are coming in, and we only had a little bit of time to talk with them before they went on. And we tried to say, please mute if you're not on stage, but that didn't always happen. And so we had that feedback, right? We would have the echo of like one person's not muted because I'm mixing from Zoom into OBS with a border with some video elements and then shooting it into Crowdcast. So it was, you would have feedback, and it's hard to like track that down live. That was a challenge, I would say. A discovery, I guess a discovery that, and something I'm really excited about, is that digital production makes international collaboration much more accessible without having to travel somewhere, right? What else? I think that's it. Yeah. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Hamilton. I use she, her, hers, coming to you from the traditional lands of the Nipmuc and Pecumtuck people, now known as Western Massachusetts. I run the Co-Festival performance here. I have shoulder-length white hair. I am dressed in an autumnal palette of olive green and rust. And even my glasses are in the palette as they are a dark, deep green. Let's see, my access needs are met. And the challenge I'm having is that the outdoor dance concert that I was talking about last week was just canceled a few minutes ago, in spite of incredible safety protocols on the part of the dance faculty member with sanitizing an outdoor dance floor in Western Massachusetts. I mean, our meeting with the campus electricians was in snow. but we were supposed to have good weather this week, and we had an outdoor dance flight. We had tarps for it was being sanitized multiple times a day. The dancers were in special athletic masks, which are more protective with heavy breathing. All choreography was 6 feet apart. It was choreography that was taking a real activist bent. And the dancers were being so strict in their discipline around the virus. And it was the athletic teams on campus that on a tiny campus led to an outbreak of 11 cases that is now spreading even further. And it's just hard when you really develop protocols. It was going to be drive-in with all audience in cars. In a special arrangement. We had parking people arranged. We had a student section for people who were quarantining in the same dorm. Everything was arranged that way. I had done tests on lighting. One of the things that I discovered is that if there's lighting in an area, you may not want to turn it off for safety reasons. Like there was a street light at the side of this performance area. Now, we did get permission to turn it off, but it would not have been as safe for pedestrians and cars turning in. So we decided that we would keep it on. And so part of my challenge was to visually balance the street light. So what I was doing with the street light coming from the side, almost a dance angle, I couldn't get the height, but I could try to match the color temperature of the street, that sort of sodium color, so that we would have a balance thing. And then in order to get some sort of light on faces and to blind cars in a street behind the performance area, to not blind them as much, what we decided to do was to go with foot angles of cyc lights. And the reason we use cyc lights, usually used to light a backdrop, is that they spread light very fast. And when you're outdoors in a non-traditional situation, sometimes they're made to be balanced on the ground pretty easily, and you can tilt them somewhat. But what we had done is made very low goalposts of horizontal pipes so that we could hang it and then tip it and get it safely out of passing by car angles, and then work with the choreographers about the distance to the front of the stage area and the lights, and then the parking people, so that we made sure the lights weren't going to be run over. But lights that are traditionally used in the theater for one purpose only, light a cyc, are absolutely fabulous for outdoor lights, events where you need very few lights to cover a whole lot of ground. But alas, no one will see it. That's it for me.
Sabrina, before I do my check-in, and partly because I am heading out, just thank you for that fulsome introduction. I feel like the learning is not lost, it's shared, even if it wasn't, fully troubleshooted as one would with a real live event. Hi everyone, my name's Tanya Newmeyer. I use they them pronouns. My access need is I have to pop out at 1:30. I'm a short-haired, blonde, non-binary white person in a brown scarf with like a blue, what is this, lumberjack shirt, flannel. I'm zooming in from the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Petun, the Mississauga of the New Credit, the Anishinaabe people in what's colonially known as Toronto, a traditional meeting place of many peoples on a big lake that looks like an ocean on the other side of the border. Thinking of my American colleagues this week a lot. So just wanted to pop in and wish you well, and as you take care of yourselves this week, and take care of whatever civic duties you can do. I had a brief encounter with Claudia online, exploring new platforms, and because I'm running a twice weekly program on Zoom with youth, we're trying to keep it interesting, and we found that going into other platforms like AirMeet, which we all did, or Hopin, which I've been to a couple conferences on, it really does sort of change some chemistry in the brain, that although Zoom can be familiar and comfortable in a certain way, that changing it up can add a sort of feeling of like, woo. Claudia, the thing that you came by, we actually couldn't see you. We had another friend come by, and it was they're still working out the kinks. I think it's called Meet Eye to Eye or something. It's a Canadian college that's shaping it up, and it's a lot like one of the spaces that we went to, and neither Claudia or I could remember the name of it. but where there's sound based on proximity, and we were in a public space, and it seemed to have something to do with timing of who could see who when. So by the time we all kicked each other out and then got back in, eventually we were on the same page, but there was some really weird permission stuff that wasn't with AirMeet. It was another one. I'll have to put it in the notes if I can remember to copy and paste the link. So yeah, just good learning there in terms of trying to stick with this thing and stay steady and do the community building and yeah, use all the technology to the best of its ability. So just constant appreciation for this group of shared learning. Really grateful for you. If anyone has had extensive experience on Hopin, it looks like I'll be working with Andrea Asaf as ongoing tech support for Art to Action to help with the National Directing Institute with Pangea Theatre. So trying to set that up, and I have put out a few calls, but just thought I'd make that request here too, to please reach out, tnewmeyer@gmail.com. Oops, I gave out my email on the internet. And I assume it's mostly me watching these YouTube videos trying to catch up with all of you. So I've taken a little bit of extra time, but thanks for being here. And if you've been on Hopin, please get in touch. Bye.
Thanks, Tanya. You're not the only one catching up. I'm catching up right now, too. Hi, I'm Karen Schleifer, she, they pronouns. I'm on the land of Muakima, Ohlone tribe of San Francisco Bay. I work mainly with the San Francisco Shakespeare Festival. I am their stage manager. Hi, Joshua, from basically, April through September. And we spent all of the pandemic together. And on September 27th, I reemerged into this world that everybody else has been dealing with and wrapping their heads around. And I find myself, I feel like it's March and it's the beginning again for me personally, because I'm lost. I know what we did all 6 months I was with Shakes, and now I'm kind of playing catch up. Which is unsettling. And I'm just kind of like, I need to get back into Claudia's session and listen to what people are talking about. And I do work with another organization called The Secret City. They're bi-coastal, awesome community of artists. And I do run their Sunday services, which we have the last Sunday of each month. We just had one on Sunday. And we have salons on Thursday nights. So it's basically just on Zoom. So I'm not working with much other, OBS or anything integrated to stream anymore. So I'm looking to, bone up on my skills on those things and retake classes and start from the beginning again. From observing this week, we had a musician from Israel that participated on Sunday. So that was interesting, for the tech the day before and for coordinating time zones and equipment and lags and things like that. But that's as much as I've been doing and just kind of trying to play catch up with all of you. My access needs are met. I'm wrapping myself in New York because that's what brings me comfort in these days, because that's my home originally. And I thank you for continuing this, Claudia. You're amazing.
I don't feel like we've heard from everyone. Have we heard from everyone?
I guess that leaves me. Hey, everybody. Do you have prompts that you can drop in the chat so I can cover everything, Claudia? Because I joined after that would have happened. But I think I can start. I'm Rob Neal, he, him, his pronouns. I am on the unceded lands of the Lenape in Manhattan. My needs are currently met. I am wearing large black headphones over a green hat. I am a white male wearing also yellow glasses, slightly scruffy, and a black hoodie. And now I'll look at the chat. The challenge that we're currently having is now that we've done our pilot 3 Cyber Wrench Live Neo-Futurist shows. Oh, I'm with the New York Neo-Futurists. We are going to continue doing the last Saturday of every month this year, but we have now to survey the entire company as to what we've done, what we're doing, and what we want to do going forward. We kind of made it so November and December will be lighter months after our online virtual gala and the launch of CyberWrench. And then we also had season 1 of Hit Play, our podcast, come to an end in October, so we could kind of deal with what the added chaos is about to be and not be so focused on putting things out there, more about supporting what is happening with this country. And in doing that, figuring out how we move forward. So that's the big challenge, is to get all that information from all of our company members, since we are an ensemble, and look at what we've done and how we can continue. We continue to pay artists, which is great, although the pool is super small. And there's a point where we're going to discuss whether we just pay everybody a little bit per week, no matter how much they're doing artistically, or if we tether it to the work that we're doing. Currently, it's just a pool that is that way, which is interesting and helpful. We've been, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We have an artists pool of funds that it's opt out, that everybody that, well, it's not just artists, but everybody in the company that is eligible for the pool, but people opt out depending on their needs, and then the remaining amount is split. And there's a lot of support for people that way, like, let's support everybody, but there's also some people going, well, now I'm doing more work than a lot of other people. How do we taking that into account? So that's also a super challenge. I guess that's 2 challenges. And there also is, I just watched an amazing thing online where a woman recreated several of Beyonce's videos for Halloween, just immaculately. And I thought that was just to put that out now. I don't know any story behind what it was, but it was very inspiring and amazing too. It kind of lifted my morning. I'll send you a link. I'll put the link in the chat for what it is if you haven't seen it. It's on Instagram. Thank you.
Heather joined us via chat, and I'm going to see if I can scroll to the message that Heather sent us that was in the chat. Hi, friends. I'm offering my intro via chat today. We'll have camera off later in the meeting. Calling in from unceded Ohlone land, where the Chochenyo language is spoken, also known as Berkeley, California. I'm a middle-aged white woman with glasses and pandemic ombre mid-length gray/reddish hair. Freelance director, emerging intimacy coordinator, thrilled to be part of Women's Theater Festival's upcoming Occupy the Stage event this weekend. We'll drop link in the chat once I've switched devices. Lovely. And thank you for that link. I look forward to I always enjoy watching people fully solo style recreate music videos and films. That's always fun. Is there anyone else who wanted to do an introduction and check in? Lovely. Well, as always, if there are late arrivals, we can always hear those voices. So today, as I said before I hit record, potentially we might have a shorter session today. We have a lot of folks who are actively not here today because they are heavily involved in volunteer efforts to get out the vote, as well as big artistic projects that they've been talking about for months and months that are also fully concentrated on getting people to vote on what's the date everyone's supposed to vote by? Is it November 3rd? Is that the date? November 3rd. I know that I voted weeks and weeks ago. So I'm hoping everybody has gotten their votes in. And if they haven't, they're calling their cousins, they're calling their friends, they're calling everybody to get those votes out. I myself am a little, what's the word, cynical about the national exercise of voting, but I recognize that it's a necessary performative act so that there's a legible narrative about what we actually said we wanted. So I look forward to experiencing a legible narrative. I hope enough of us vote so there's a legible narrative. Ah, America. So before I go into shouting out other projects, I would love to invite anybody who's currently in the space right now. Do you have a civic engaged project that's happening in the next week or so? Because we also are quite aware that we all have to vote by November 3rd. But then there's an entire thing where all the votes have to be counted. There's going to be process around that. There's going to be a lot of misinformation happening, disinformation going around in the weeks afterwards. So we're very excited about the projects that happened last week, the projects that are happening this week, and we're also excited about the projects that are happening the week after. So does anyone in the space want to shout out their civic engaged project so we can make sure to put it on the Facebook and attend it ourselves?
I don't know when it's going to be, given all of what I said, but we are definitely having some special bonus episode of Hit Play responding to what is termed election season. And it's just a matter of how things go. We said that we would revisit that on the 4th after we do what we're doing. I'm actually going to work for curing the ballots for Pennsylvania all day tomorrow. To call people whose ballots were not valid when they sent them in early, which everybody can go do. Everybody can go check their own ballots and then help other people. And then we'll definitely we have Cyber Wrench at the end of November on the 28th that will respond to where we are at that point. That's what we have.
The evening of November 4th, Calling Up Justice, in collaboration with Fool's Fury, we'll be inviting folks to visit our Twitch stream. We will be on Twitch and we will be playing Among Us and talking about the election results or the results as they've came in. Alcohol will possibly be involved, video game playing will take place, and civically engaged conversation between passionate theater artists will ensue. So that should be taking place 5:30 in the evening on November 5th, I believe. And folks can go to twitch.tv/callingupjustice and just hit follow. And if you just hit follow, apparently it gives you some kind of update that lets you know when we're online. It's very automatic. Yay, Twitch. Well, I'm going to share my screen real quick and let's see what I have in here. Of course, as we were chatting, I was working on our transmedia producing asynchronous learning lab. We got all kinds of great stuff in here. Oh boy, learn all these wonderful things. So whenever you're sharing resources, we're dropping them into this asynchronous space so that folks can also access them there. But let's also just see what is happening in the world when it comes to Act Out, Vote 2020. This is a project that is, I believe, complete. It had a lot of famous stars involved in it. Lots of theater companies were collaborating. So this was national, lots of great theater artists. Hey, Lady Dane, all right. So Act Out 2020. In the meantime, this is the Theater Community of Americans banding together to get out the vote. created by Luis Alfaro, Ryan Haddad, so all sorts of really, Mariana Yazzie, so lots of great artists involved in the creation of this. And this is asynchronously available. So if you want to do a watch party, send this video to others, you can. It's full of great entertainment and wonderful stuff. Art and Activism, a masterclass in research-based theater. This is a workshop you could go to on November 7th to get yourself ready to do more work. Byron Wong, who has come to several of these sessions. We Are the Ones, a vote. And I'm just going to play a bit of this, not all of it. It's 4 minutes long, so I won't play all of it.
Since my brother turned a gun on his classmates and then himself, I've been trying to learn how to stop this from happening to anyone else.
I was supposed to see my cousin the day the cop shot him. Now I wear my cousin's face on the button so he will not be forgotten.
I had 5 friends shot in my city 1 school year. My chest is filled with buttons. That's the rule here. I'll keep each face close to my heart. Unless soon there's gonna be no room left on my chest.
Soon there's gonna be no room left in my chest. I look at my class photo and wonder who's left. Will my face be on a rest in peace button on some dude's chest?
I'm from the suburbs, never heard of that question. But I just lost my best friend and half a dozen other classmates in this shooting all of a sudden. And I can't fit a whole class picture on a button. And no button's big enough to fill the hole in my chest where my best friend lives. We say never again and again. Adults don't have the guts to end this. We have to take.
All right, what other amazing projects do we have that we can experience? What's happening this week? Oh, Ricky, did I actually open you up into a second thing? I didn't. Oh, that's annoying. Ricky Pack. This Land is a live performance on Zoom exploring the 2020 presidential elections based on interviews conducted with people from across battleground states around the country. Circle Collective, This Land, exploration of the 2020 presidential election. And let's see. Oh, this is Christina Wong for public office. She's already attended one of our sessions and fully presented on this project. It is so delightful. I think she presented right before she opened. Oh, and then that's just my Zoom. So we're going to hit stop share on the sharing of the screen because those were my sample projects to get our conversation started. So I have a question for folks. Do you personally have a plan like I'd already named, I think I'm producing, I know I'm producing something in a couple of days. The New York Neo-Futurists, they're planning on producing something. Do folks have plans to produce something in the next couple of weeks that is in response to or in conversation with political engagement? I see a hand raised. What was?
Yeah, well, I know this is upcoming. We just haven't put it together yet, so I don't have a date exactly. I think we're going to be doing a live reading on November 18th of Separate is Never Equal, mixed with pictures. It's a children's book by Duncan Tonadium, and it's not going to be super long, but it's going to be a talk afterwards. And we're going to also produce it, I think, both reading in English and also subtitles in Spanish.
I love the reading in English and subtitles in Spanish. That's nice. One of the beautiful things about these digital spaces is that they allow us to have more points of accessibility than we could in strictly physically shared space. So I love that. Any other upcoming projects that folks have coming up in the next couple of weeks? So in our conversations over the last few months, many of us have been involved in projects that we're speaking. I recall, Sabrina, you did the project around Juneteenth. Viviana, you've been vital in several projects that I've been doing, and also you've got your own beautiful practice. I have a question for all of us. When it comes to civic engaged theater, who's the audience? Who are we trying to engage with? Who are we trying to activate?
Particularly with historical matters, I think this country is so lackadaisical in its study of its own history and any other histories, that I find for those materials, there's an extremely wide audience. And I know the kiss of death in grant proposals is when you say everyone, it's for everyone. But I have to say, what is extraordinary to me is what the enormous blind spots we have around history.
I know in my own work, I'm often trying to hit that sweet spot of, I'm trying to get two audience demographics. I'm trying to get the audience demographic of folks who are part of the marginalized community that needs to be heard, the marginalized community that needs to feel the good feelings of, we support you, we're into this thing. But I'm also trying to get that other audience demographic that's like, wait, there's a problem? Wait, something needs to be something, wait, there's something wrong. So I'm trying to get both of and if I can get both of those demographics into the same room or the same audiencing experience, I find that interesting outcomes happen. But I realize I'm in a space either trying to change minds or serve people who aren't being served. I think that's what my civic engaged work is often doing.
What kind of success are you finding in getting those two groups into a space? Because I think particularly the mind changing group is hard to find acceptance to even engage, right? They don't necessarily show up as easily. It's hard to locate them, yet alone get them in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also just to add to that, for me, like wanting to create a safe space for the folks on the other side, the folks who are more of the marginalized community. For me, I think I definitely am centering like BIPOC, queer community in the large umbrella of all the things that I do. Literally internationally, like I'm in Latin America. So yeah, I think for me also there's this concern of like wanting to make sure that when I'm including and welcoming folks, and particularly this shows up as like white folks in a workshop, for example, that I did yesterday on strategic planning, and wanting to make sure that we're not only centering and trying to center the folks' privileged needs, and then at the cost of other folks potentially enduring harm in the spaces that I'm creating, feeling the same emotional labor that oftentimes we're trying to get out of. So I feel like there is that balance that I'm also working with too.
I also think, just to respond to Rob's question, in this new producing in pandemic paradigm where audiences have more agency to choose where they will audience, I'm actually finding it more difficult to get to that audience that I go, oh, your audience that I'm fully transforming. I'm actually having trouble getting to them. In the past, I had venues where people were they were enculturated, they were used to going to that space to receive their artwork. And then I could produce something different inside the space they always went to. So I could transform the content of the space they were used to going to. And so it wasn't me trying to get that antagonistic audience to come to my social justice event. It was me bringing a social justice event into their theater space.
Yeah, just riffing off of that. I mean, I think the idea of how do we create dialogue with thoughts other than our own, rather than create echo chamber pieces, is a big one. It's like how can we bring those in the digital space when they're just going to be turned off, possibly by a title, if we're actually looking for dialogue of an opposing viewpoint.
Well, and also just to bounce off what Viviana was speaking about, oftentimes these events that are supposed to be about speaking to the needs of marginalized communities are just triggering events that are telling us stories of trauma and harm that we already know. Like we don't, like the Every 28 Hours plays, that project, that isn't for an audience that already knows. That's for an audience that needs to learn. So it's also a question of, I just want to do a shout out for having different types of spaces. So I said, one of the spaces I try to do is this one that has blended constituencies for civic engagement. Shout out for spaces that are about one audience type doing one thing. I think that that's useful and necessary too. What are the ways that we're actually effectively getting the word out right now? Or does it feel harder in this remote pandemic paradigm?
Can you repeat that question?
I was asking, how are we getting the word out? How are we effectively accessing the audiences to get them civically engaged? And then I did my thing where I always ask two questions at the same time. So I said, how are we doing it? And also, is it harder in this post-pandemic paradigm?
I find it easier to get the word out. I find it harder for people to engage just because of bandwidth and the number of things that are happening. And clearly here in the States with the election, that taking a lot of energy. We are, through social media channels and our mailing list, reaching supposedly more people than we ever have. Like for a small company like the Neo-Futurists, tens of thousands of people are supposedly getting our message, but are they actually seeing, hearing it, and then wanting to engage? Or is it in some kind of Gmail folder that they never actually see it anyway, or are we not in their feeds?
Yeah, I'm recalling one of the most effective pieces of audience development I did for the New York Neo-Futurist was I spoke to some dude at a coffee shop, and he ended up like coming to every show and supporting for years. He's still a gigantic theater producer. He's just now based in New Orleans. I ran into him at some event. The world is small and it's amazing. But I do think that I am experiencing more difficulty in having deep engagement. So I want to say yes to being able to, I can get my message to a bunch of inboxes. I don't know if it's getting read. We've got email, we've got social media. Are those the only two communication channels we have? Like, how are we actually talking to folks and engaging with them?
I still find personal invitation is the thing that actually gets people there, the personal touch. So when we were doing our Juneteenth event, it was so much about the whole team reaching out personally to people that they knew, I would say was the most effective, as opposed to the thousands of things that we sent out that, get lost in the shuffle. The problem then is that you are often preaching to the choir. Now, the choir may not know what your whole project is, but did you actually change an opinion? You may have given people greater depth and of knowledge, but I feel like I am so much, especially in the liberal bubble of Western Massachusetts, speaking to the choir. And so there's, something to be said for keeping people's spirits up and deepening the knowledge and ongoing commitment and those kinds of things. But the way that I can get people with different viewpoints in is generally with the kind of work we do is with post-show discussion. and making sure the panel represents different points of view, and that it's kind of equally weighted in terms of, say, people's presentational savvy, that you haven't already tipped it so much that way, or whatever you can do to sort of kind of be proactive about maybe not even, really not just going for your own point of view or having something be token, but to really try to empower points of view that you don't agree with. And it's, it's counterinstinctual in some way. It's hard, but I think it's, if we're going to do something more, especially these days, that's important.
I found partnerships with other groups and organizations incredibly helpful. Definitely for spreading the word and like getting specific communities in the space. So especially groups that already have a very strong base of a community, maybe because they had a physical space or still have a physical space that they may not be using necessarily. And then also just for bandwidth and being able to have, folks to support in the producing of it, in having a partner, a collaborating partner, an organization, a collective initiative is super helpful. For the marketing and also for the actual producing of it.
One of my techniques for reaching out to large constituencies of people that I wouldn't necessarily know would be to go to a festival or go to a protest and then just hand flyer at an event like that. I've been trying to figure out what's the digital equivalent, and I've been struggling, frankly. I just saw some heads nodding. Have people made any discoveries in that, or are you having a similar experience of it being a more difficult strategy to do online?
I have been attending like meetings, conferences virtually, and do have moments where folks share like what's going on and stuff, and that is super helpful too. So I have found some virtual convenings to be able to be present in, to do that. Definitely very different from in person, but
yeah, I definitely see the same thing. There's, moments like this and TCG and we're part of Fourth Arts Block here in New York City, and you're just sharing what you're doing, and sometimes it connects with people there, but it's not as removed like the story you told about when you did stuff for us too. Like that was the main way that I spread the word about the show, and I was surprised the first time I went to Chicago to do Too Much Light there that they didn't have flyers because they just had a built-in audience. So I'm like, I'm gonna make my own flyers because I'm gonna see people around the city while I'm doing the show here and hand it out, because it was just such a natural thing. Like, I'm at a cafe, oh hey, I do the show, you probably like it, and if they don't, they throw away a piece of paper, no big deal, but like it's just not the same. I mean, I guess the way we just had a digital gala, and we had a very good support on the donation side, and it was individuals asking individuals, and we did a lot of peer-to-peer funding for it, and that was successful because people were actually making the asks and not just putting it out there hoping somebody latches on, But it's harder in a digital world to when you can't gather to have that discovery of someone new as easily.
It also feels like a really different type of relational exchange. Like when I'm audiencing with someone, we're both equals. We're enjoying a thing together, and maybe organically in the conversation, they say something makes me go, you know what? I think, and then I reach into my bag. I'm not out there being like, you should come, which is a more transactional thing. It's more of a, no, now that I've gotten to know you, I think you would like this. Or so I'm curious about when and where those opportunities will happen more, because sometimes I'll be in a group Zoom and I'll have the exchange where somebody says a comment. I'll go, oh, you would be into this, and then I'll DM them in the Zoom, but oftentimes the Zoom's set up to not even allow private conversations like that. So yeah, interesting stuff. I have one last question for us before we break off to do civic engagement in the IRL, in real life world. And that is, everyone's really focused on November 4th, right? They're like, okay, on November 4th, that's when we're going to be done. And then we don't need to worry about this anymore. And that feels like a big problem. And part of the problem that we apparently think that elections are only important every 4 years, and being civically engaged is only important for the presidential election. I'm just curious, and I'm realizing it for this group of people, this is a slightly loaded question because I know your practices. So I feel like you already have civically engaged practices, but I'll ask the question anyway. What are you anticipating in the next year for your practice in civic engagement? And what do we think the field is going to need? And I just said the next year. That was a rather large period of time. Maybe I'll just say the next 6 months and make it a little more. So that was again one of those dual questions where I asked for your practice and then also for the field at large.
I want to say like a brief something as a non-American person living here for a few years. I think the next 3 months will be about like actual safety instead of, I think, I hope I'm wrong. I'm worried that we're running into a moment where before the election won't be after the election. And I really hope I'm wrong. I'm coming from a country that is experiencing civil war, and this looks a little too familiar. Sorry to be very pessimistic and alarming.
Yeah, I think you're really hitting something on the head, which is depending on what happens in this election, art might be very different post the election, right? In America, is it in response to what is happening in the streets? Is it response to this or that? So I guess like as a field, I would like to dream of the world we want to see, but that world we want to see depends in part on who is in power and how our nation is being run. So maybe we give examples of that world in our work, and it adapts to whatever's happening.
I'm just thinking a lot these days about tactics that don't just make me feel better, but that might actually work.
I'm really looking forward to really continuing, I guess, with diving deeper into it's work that I've already been doing and then just almost accelerated with the pandemic. For example, this idea of, taking care of ourselves and actually listening and, making decisions based off of our needs and what we actually desire and want and need, as opposed to just moving forward with that like capitalistic, work hard, play hard mentality. And so wanting to continue that, I mean, that's like what I have already been doing, and with these self-care, self-love workshops that I do and strategic planning as well. But really now like allowing for the world to kind of, it feels like a lot more people are more accepting into this now, and these ideas that were more radical before in the communities and spaces I was in. And so being able to kind of just like sit in with that and be able to develop it more, build a bigger community around these values, and then connected to the field, I would say so as well. Yeah, not just letting it be about tomorrow or Wednesday, and reminding people and staying active. And also I think this is like for me for the rest of my life too, right? This idea of wanting to stay hopeful and wanting to stay activated and believing that, you know, what I'm doing is affecting change and is needed, and not getting into that pessimistic, jaded mentality that I have seen others. So yeah.
I think part of it for me is not being afraid of being small. Like sometimes the most helpful thing I can do is just, it's like I just emailed Tanya about, you know, is there something, I don't know the platform, but nothing is too small or too stupid to assign to me. And those kinds of things are feeling better and better. That if I try to do something huge, it probably will not be terribly effective. But accumulation of lots of smalls might actually be more effective.
I had an exchange with a colleague who expressed that she was excited for things to return to normalcy. And I reflected that normalcy is what got us here. So I'm actually desperate for us to never have that be normal again. So I don't want us to go back to producing the kinds of theater we did last year or 5 years ago. So yeah, I'm deeply excited about theater as activating, not as anodyne. Like, what would it be like to, you go to the theater and you don't go to the theater to forget. You go to the theater to remember. You go to the theater to learn. You don't go to the theater to escape. You go to the theater to make the world a place you don't have to escape from. I don't know. It's easy for me to say because I have a social justice practice. So I'm not going to be stopping, but I'm a little concerned that everybody else is going to stop after November and go, wow, we did it. We're done. 4 years from now, we'll start this again.
I kind of think that's one thing that has changed a bit in this last year, is a lot of folks I know who never talked about, who talked about things just very episodically, very seasonally, are now consciously saying, I can't stop. I have to remember this is not just, you know, something that's happening right now, that this has to be a way of life, and a way of being in the world. And I think that's the biggest difference, and the thing that's actually giving me more hope than anything else this year.
Well, that feels like a beautiful note to close out upon. I'm going to send you all of the good vibes and energy for working on all of your various projects this week. I recognize that for those of us inside the United States, oh, it's so stressful. So drink water, make sure you've got people who can give you, I don't know, whatever helps you feel more relaxed and good with the world. I hope that is in your life and your world. And thank you for producing culture. You are important and your work is vital. And also thanks for joining us to figure out how to keep on doing this better and more. Goodbye, everybody. See you next week. Next week, we have Blind Spot Productions that are going to be sharing their production good trouble. So we've got a fun field trip that should be pretty interesting. Multi-city, transmedia, good times for next week. For this week, take care of yourselves. Vote. Oh, and I can't hit stop on record. Oh, wait, I can't hear. Stop on recording. Goodbye.